When many of us think about place and home, we think about communities where we want to belong, locations where we can contribute and feel stable, comfortable, and valued. This sense of community and belonging can actually help us forge new connections and draw networks for mutual assistance and care. Or, as we're all too familiar, belonging can be exploited by an us versus them attitude that severs ties and separates people. The tradition of Black American literature has had a long-held conversation about the value of community. Way back to Phyllis Wheatley, William Wells Brown, Jupiter Hammond, and Frederick Douglass, up to Desmond Ward and N.K. Jemisin, the notion of a we resisted the corrosive pull of me. But we're now entering a new era where the stakes of that conversation have shifted. And this conversation from the Black American literary tradition can benefit a larger national community. In today's episode, we'll look at books that realize the decline of community support, and they ask what happens when the ground under places like the Gulf Coast, Los Angeles, or Chicago becomes shaky. When that spoiled ground, in fact, damages a sense of togetherness. For the next stretch of reading, probably over a couple of months, I'll be honest with you, it might take me a little bit to get to some of these books. I'll be turning to 6 more books by contemporary Black authors that sit at the intersection of environmental fiction, speculative fiction, and displacement narrative. These books are Octavia Butler's Parable of the Sower, N.K. Jemisin's The Fifth Season, Gabrielle Bump's Everywhere You Don't Belong, Jesmyn Ward's Salvage the Bones, Tochi Onyebuchi's Goliath, and Mbole Mbue's How Beautiful We Were. 2 of these books, Parable of the Sower and Salvage the Bones, will be rereads for me. But it's been a while since I've read either of them, a couple of decades perhaps. The rest of the novels will be new to me, and 2 of them are recommendations from viewers like you. So, I'll be providing their names and addresses in case anyone would like to blame them for the readings. Don't worry, I will not do that. In a time when people may be feeling unmoored, we can turn to these excellent conversation starters that warn us and prepare us, but also nourish us with intellectual vigor. It's an odd cluster of novels, so let's first take a look at why these 6 books are next on the list, and also what I'm hoping we might find in them. I already started reading the first book on this list, which is Parable of the Sower by Octavia Butler. It was published in 1993. The story takes place in a future California, around Los Angeles, thereabouts. A young woman, about 12 at the beginning of the novel, but older later, is in a seemingly post-apocalyptic world. It seems as though the government has failed, and everything is a free-for-all, including water. Small, walled neighborhoods are the only stability for some people, but they are under constant pressure from the violent, roving gangs, addicts, and scavengers outside. This world is not the result of a specific apocalypse. Instead, it's been slowly developing as a consequence of less and less civic investment from what seems to be neoliberal political policies of austerity and corruption. The young Lauren, the main character, develops a new religion that's based on her observations from the social and environmental collapse that she witnesses. And it binds together her small, post-civilized community. Her religion is called Earthseed. Butler's emphasis on crisis, migration, and community building in a collapse corresponds to the previously mentioned themes about building connections and safety, even when the ground is shaky. Her version of belonging posits a new dynamic about what home looks like when it has been lost. I read a few excerpts of this next one, and I know that it's part of a series that had a record run on the Hugo Award. It's N.K. Jemisin's The Fifth Season. And I've been meaning to read this for years and years and years, and I've really wanted to. It seems like a fairly intricate science fiction / fantasy narrative. So I think that I'll probably have to read a little bit more of it in order to do justice to Jemisin's setting. But I'll try to explain what it is from the synopsis that I've read. One main character, a woman who can control seismic energy, lives on a supercontinent called the Stillness. Good name. It's plagued by cycles of catastrophic environmental events, and the woman's powers are exploited as a way to protect society as a whole. But the continent heads into a new season of catastrophe, and she's forced to bear more and more responsibility to keep, in particular, the hegemony safe. This is another book about environmental collapse. And given the emphasis on exploitation, it looks like it explores the question about who bears the burden of a broken world. This is a relevant question because many historical societies have asked and forced others, like enslaved peoples or migrant labor, to bear the weight for them. I'll be looking for how the book addresses climate crises, social collapse, and race-based oppression. The main character is part of a people called, I think it's the Origines, and they're subjected for their powers. So while many stories in the past have been told from a dominant society's perspective, Jemisin tells the fifth season through powerful peoples who have been subjugated. Gabrielle Bump's Chicago novel, Everywhere You Don't Belong, was one of the books recommended by a viewer. It also won the Gaines Award after its publication. I did a little research on it, and it looks darkly humorous and pretty interesting. It's the first book on this list that's not specifically eco-literature or speculative, for that matter. And in fact, I'd mostly classify this as realist literary fiction. It's the first book on this list that's not specifically eco-literature or speculative. And in fact, I'd mostly classify this as realist literary fiction. The main character's name is Claude McKay Love, which should sound familiar. It's an allusion to the early 20th century author Claude McKay. You may know McKay mostly through the poem America, and he also has one of my favorite book titles ever, Amiable with Big Teeth. Good title. I'm not yet clear on what connections Gabrielle Bump's character might have with his literary namesake, but it seems to be that the historical McKay's own travels between societies was an influence. For the historical McKay, he immigrated from Jamaica to America. The main character, Claude, moves between Chicago's South Side and the university. So the connection may suggest a transition between radically different situations, just like the historical Claude. Claude, the main character, is from Chicago's South Side, as I said. And he's witness to a lot of upheaval from cops and gangs in his neighborhood. He eventually leaves for college in Missouri, and he's caught in a push and pull of deciding where he actually belongs. For Claude, home is actually a place of anxiety and violence. But he notices that the same feelings follow him to college as well. It seems to parallel some of the other books on this list because it focuses on the identity of a place and the main character's feelings of displacement. Bump's perspective offers another vision of community and identity during a period of his main character's transition. I read this next novel around when it first came out. Not only was it a major literary event, but it's been cited on multiple lists of impactful novels of the 21st century. It also won the National Book Award in its year of publication. The main character, Esh, lives with her father and brothers in Mississippi 12 days before and after Hurricane Katrina. They're barely scraping by. So when the hurricane hits, they must find ways to salvage the things they value most: their food and water, their safety, their family, and their lives. Even as they have so little, they struggle to protect it. The book shows how Katrina magnifies existing poverty and further threatens already vulnerable populations. It has some similarities with the other selections, but rather than emphasizing a breakdown in social order, it more so demonstrates the result of existing social collapse as an even worse crisis arrives. Here's a hint: things get much worse for this family. Because Salvage the Bones focuses on intimate, local scale details, it has the potential of new subversions on resilience narratives. Resilience, actually, it first requires resources to be resilient. So Esh and her broken family do not have any of those things, and they survive regardless. Some viewers may know this next author from another book called Riot Baby. Great title. But for this episode, I'm going to discuss Tochi Onyebuchi's Goliath. This is a new author for me, so this will be the first book of his that I've read. But I also have Riot Baby on my TBR. Goliath features a future Earth split into two. One population lives in space, and the other population of mostly brown and black people has been left behind on a poisoned, polluted Earth. The fragmented narrative takes readers through what's called the Great Return, where people from space are returning to live on Earth. Meanwhile, the story also follows a class of people called stackers. They manage to make a living by salvaging bricks and other features from abandoned houses. These materials are to be used by new and incoming residents. According to some of the interviews that I saw on YouTube with Onyebuchi, the story is a new perspective on gentrification because the returners are building a new life in the so-called Old World, and in particular, New Haven, Connecticut. Their return actually threatens the existence of the Old World people who have already been living on the planet. But those Old World people are displaced by the well-meaning returners. The book focuses on displacement. So it asks questions about who belongs, who owns, and who gets remembered when the old society is literally dismantled and remade. The metaphor connects the broader theme of the other books through its emphasis on communities that have been shifted and also forced out. Writer Mbole Mbwe is originally from Cameroon, but she became an American citizen way back in 2014. I was going to begin with her first book, Behold the Dreamers, but her second book, How Beautiful We Were, It seemed a little bit more in tune with the rest of this list, specifically on climate and belonging. The book follows people from a fictional African village called Kosawa as they reckon with the pollution from a U.S. oil company. Their land and water is poisoned, and children, they get sick, and some of them eventually die. The village takes action, but they have to decide whether or not to trust help through the official channels. The narrative is told over years and from multiple voices as the village identifies and battles against the source of pollution. The novel directly addresses many of the common themes from this list, which includes environmental racism and the rights of the original inhabitants of the land. The people from Kosawa struggle with how they can fight for their home and stay in a polluted land. As I read this book, I want to learn more about the villagers' decisions to stay and fight, and how the destruction of their village affects their perceptions of belonging, especially in a home that has been damaged and also damages them in return. As you heard in these overviews, each book attends to common themes around belonging, home, climate, and environment. So as I read through these books, I want to discover the differing perspectives on some essential problems. Parable of the Sower is about a community in flux during a drought and social collapse. The fifth season and Salvage the Bones deal with consequences of climate disasters, and Goliath and How Beautiful We Were tackle environmental pollution. These are all climate stories that stress different views on how disasters alter landscapes and societies. But the metaphor addresses an essential contradiction between poisoned lands and belonging. It asks how belonging can occur when home itself is the poison. Everywhere We Don't Belong does not touch on these same environmental concepts. But in its exploration of Chicago and university, it examines similar themes about place and home mentioned in other stories about rural Mississippi, Los Angeles, Kasawa, and U.S. cities. These books tell us that home is not an abstract idea. It's a physical base for identity, stability, and place that is in the streets, the family and friends, as well as in the buildings that stand monument to all of these things. Underneath everything, these narratives on home and environment instigate important questions about a sense of belonging and community when the world of we falls apart. Parable of the Sower shapes community around that change. The fifth season finds commonality between people who are called monsters. Goliath returns to old world residents who are no longer useful in the environment they built. In all cases, Black characters try to decide who they can trust, where they can live, and what kind of we they can build in the middle of all of it. Even though these novels approach it from different genres and tones, realist, sci-fi, folk epic, they're all circling the same core ideas: a world that is becoming less stable. This discussion has been ongoing in African American literary traditions for years, and the lessons explored therein, perhaps, offer insight for learning about unsettled times. Before we end, I'd like your input in the comments. When we return with another episode on these books, which of the six should get a full deep dive? Second, what other books by Black authors about comets, cities, and belonging should be on our radar? I look forward to your ideas in the comments. This has been Tilting at Tomes. I'm Ben. Good night and good reading. When we return with another episode on these books, the hell, dude?